Manifest is the only show that actually covers the full scope of the supply chain. So from maritime through last mile and within the four walls. And, if a chief supply chain officer is there, they can't divide themselves into 10. So it is, a lot of folks bring their team, and that's created a lot of value for, everyone across the board, right? Because then, you're able to actually see, feel, interact with the different robotics, autonomous vehicles, software, different IoT pieces, and bring that firsthand experience back to your team.
Welcome to the ThinkFreight Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Werdine, and it's my pleasure to have Pam Simon, the conference chair at Manifest, the future of supply chain. Pam, thanks for coming on the ThinkFreight Podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you guys have a really big event coming up. When is the event? And then we're kind of dive into a little bit more about you and how Manifest started.
Of course. So Manifest takes place February 5 to 7 at Caesars Forum in Las Vegas. And I will say that is the week leading into the Super Bowl. So start planning your travel now.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of supply chain partying plus Super Bowl festivities going on. So it's going to be a really fun time. Definitely need to, if you're planning on going, definitely need to plan accordingly and start getting your rooms now because, it's going to be hectic. So let's dive into like kind of your background, how you got to like this point, how Manifest started, and then we'll kind of dig a little bit deeper from there. Before we dive into today's show, we want to give a massive thank you to our partners and sponsors. Manifest is the largest global supply chain and logistics tech event in the world, bringing together Fortune 500 global supply chain executives, logistics service providers, cutting-edge startups, venture investors, and technology leaders. Join ThinkFreight and more than 4,500 supply chain innovators in Vegas on February 5th through the 7th, 2024. Now remember, ThinkFreight listeners save $200 off the current price to attend. To learn more and to register, visit manifestvegas.com/ThinkFreight. Now, let's dive back into our episode.
Sure. I guess you can think of me as a connector, right? Or an ecosystem builder. So I've been creating and starting ecosystems for a while now. I was very involved in the New York tech scene. And then when I was in Brazil, hosted the first demo day that's ever taken place in the country, the first entrepreneur.
That's pretty cool.
I started LATAM Founders, which is the biggest network of investors and startups in tech in LATAM. And then, was fortunate enough to join Lab Ventures as a partner. And it's a fund based in Miami. And we started to do some venture building, specifically in the areas that were dominating business in Florida. So real estate, travel, and logistics. So that was my real entry into the space.
So how did you go into building some of those networks in Latin America? How did that come about? I'm very intrigued by that.
Organically, I guess.
Interesting.
Yes. I've always had a big global network. So when I moved down there, it was tapping into friends that were there. And I was like, hey, I was in tech in New York. So what can I do down here to help?
Right.
And continued to make those connections, and then started hosting smaller events and matchmaking, really like putting together investors and startups,
cool.
investors and corporates. So really fostering those relationships. And then with Lab Ventures, when we started to do some venture building, which is when you build companies in-house, for me, or at least my experience, the best way to build and strengthen relationships is through live shared experiences. So
I agree.
So I launched a series of, future of events, one of them being the future of logistics. So that was in 2017. For that show, it was more of a closed event, so like 500 attendees. And then in December of 2019, Connectiv acquired the series.
Okay. So let's dive into that. So how did Connective like how did that acquisition go, and how did manifest the overall like the future of supply chain, what it is today as a freight festival? How did that come to fruition? Like how did those ideas start? Because like you said, it was a 500 person kind of closed event, and now it's thousands upon thousands of the biggest enterprise level, mid level entrepreneurs that you can think of. So how did it grow from that small 500 closed event to what it is today?
I mean, I think it's what I've been manifesting this.
I love that.
I really have. Um, you know, I, the event series was great. And then, when Connectiv acquired it, Connectiv has started some of the biggest events. They've started the largest insurance tech conference in the world,
Hmm.
HR, and a few other verticals. So when I was connected to the founder, Jay, it was just it made a lot of sense. I was like, hey, I have verticals that you haven't explored yet. Let's explore this together. And we have an incredible team and visionaries on the services and the just production side of things. So to be able to work with such an incredible team that's really been in the events industry for a while has allowed us to get that scale. Um,
Yeah, really helped you like elevate like what you were doing to like such a broader level and a bigger scale to really like have the biggest impact. Like it sounds like you're really big on like connecting people. Like you said at the beginning, like you're an ecosystem. You're big on connecting people. So I think like as you said, you had been manifesting this and Connective acquired it. Like I think that just like how everything kind of came together, like all the pieces kind of connected really well. And I think that like, where you guys are today, and we'll kind of touch on that in a minute, is really impressive, right? Like when was the first, so you said it was 2019, correct? The first,
so
like
Connective acquired the series in
in
2019.
2019.
The world shut down.
Yeah.
Um, as everyone knows. And so our first official show was, in 2021
Mm,
and 2022, yeah, 2022. And it was in the middle of the Omicron wave, which was
right.
wild to do, but we still had about 1,500 attendees from over 40 different countries, and
Wow.
the FOMO was real. Like the people that weren't able to attend due to travel restrictions and you know all of the
Absolutely.
outside things happening that you can't control, they felt that. So from this year, we had about 3,300 executives from over
Wow.
45 countries, and over 60,000 meetings took place at the show this year. So a lot of business gets done.
That's really impressive. I think that people don't realize how large and at scale some of these events are, right? Like you can see people posting online, you see 10 or 15 people you may be connected with on LinkedIn or on Twitter, and you see them posting those pics, and like you said, you do have that FOMO. Like whenever I see my friends at different events, I'm like, dang, maybe I should have went to that. Like
Yeah.
next year I'm definitely penciling that in. Like, oh, I didn't even know this was happening. So it was like, I think it comes down to like creating that FOMO for like always the next year, right? To like, man, we're gonna really create a really great atmosphere and kind of like a party level like experience, but for freight. Because a lot of other like areas in technology have already done those kind of things, and it's very new to freight. So I think that like what you guys are doing with that is very interesting, and trying to incorporate like a lot of fun but also a lot of really interactive learning, and a lot of interactive meetings and demos and things like that, to where it's a really hands-on experience, and it's not so closed off, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And I mean, what we've seen in the last year and then what we're expecting for next year, people have really understood the importance of, bringing their team, bringing more, because,
Absolutely.
Manifest is the only show that actually covers the full scope of the supply chain. So from maritime through last mile and within the four walls. And, if a chief supply chain officer is there, they can't divide themselves into 10. So it
Right.
is a lot of folks bring their team, and that's created a lot of value for, I mean, everyone across the board, right? Because then, you're able to actually
Mm,
see, touch, feel, interact with the different robotics, autonomous vehicles, software, different IoT pieces. and,
Exactly.
bring that firsthand experience back to your team.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important, right? Because I see a lot of times people talking about like, oh, like we don't need to attend these events or things like that. And to a degree, I can understand if you're a one person show and you're really getting off the ground, maybe you don't need to. Maybe they're right. You don't need to attend yet. But like, if you're a growing organization, you're a growing team, and you're really trying to get in front of executives who make these decisions and just trying to create those connections overall. Like you may not get freight today from it, you may not get exactly what you're looking for from it today, but it's all about connecting those pieces, making those connections, putting a face to the name, and then just being able to tap into that network as you need to. It's not always about like the end goal today. It's looking, towards the future, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just, I mean, it's corporates, it's startups, it's also investors, right? So at
Mm,
this show, there was over 150 different funds in
wow.
attendance. And the benefit for that is really, it's the full gamut of funding. So from super early angel all the way through, your exits and M&A. So those types of connections are great because maybe you're not ready to fundraise today, but now you
Mm,
have that relationship with an investor. So when you are ready, you already have that in. You already have that
yeah,
relationship set up. They already know who you are. It's not like it's a cold outreach. It's like, oh, wait, we've met, we've hung out, we had some interesting experience.
exactly.
Yeah. So we try to outdo ourselves every year and really help facilitate those types of interactions. Even for shippers, right? So we'll have, more closed roundtables for shippers so that they
Mm.
can learn from each other, not just, exploring the technology, the investors, everything on the floor, but also to be able to have that peer-to-peer networking experience.
I think that that's important too, like for shippers, for brokers, for anyone who's just in a vertical space, that they can really learn from each other and share what they're doing and best practices, what isn't working, what is working, because there's a lot of things that there's a lot of moving pieces, and there's just maybe you tried, maybe someone tried something but it didn't work as effectively because there was one missing critical step, and someone else can solve that critical step in a roundtable or a meeting like that, or it's like, hey, I've done this effectively. Let's connect after the event, and like I can tell you how we've been doing it. And it's building those really interpersonal relationships, and being able to take those going forward. It's not just about like what is at the event that minute. It's like taking those forward, pushing forward, and building off of that.
Exactly. I mean, it really is the place to build and strengthen your relationships. And we do create, some incredible shared weird experiences. We like to say we get weird, we have fun. We're in Vegas. Ease Logistics is sponsoring our puppy lounge, which is always a
I love
huge
that. Oh
thing.
yeah.
It's my favorite place to be too. It's adorable.
Oh
Um,
my
and
God. Yeah.
then, we have some other fun surprises in store, from rose all day to backyard barbecue to a spa or style studio if you need a haircut, if you need your nails done, whatever
Oh
whatever
yeah.
you need to take care of. There's a rose all day, there's a beer garden, and then there's also like a mocktail lounge for those that don't want to drink. And Viho's
That's great.
sponsoring me a coffee bar, so there's coffee flowing at all times. Don't worry.
Hey, that's great. I am a coffee on tap. Like I need it in my veins at all times because it's just I'm always busy and always need it. But let's dive into something I think is really interesting. You guys are the future of logistics and supply chain. So what is the future of it? Like what does the future of logistics and supply chain look like?
A lot. I mean, that's kind of a very broad question. um,
Absolutely, but I'm kind of interested. Like, so where do you see, like, I guess from a standpoint of today, right? Like, there's a lot happening in the market with unemployment rising in the logistics sector, a lot of closures with Convoy recently closing. Where do you see, I guess, the future of like I guess VC money, tech in the next 5 years? Like we really just got started in freight logistics and really having a lot of these tech startups, and I don't want to see some of those progressional steps start going backwards.
No, I agree with you. I mean, digitalization is and AI come up in every single conversation that I have. So I'm
Yeah.
sure we will be covering and deep diving into that quite a bit. Sustainability and, your ESG. There's a lot of companies that, have made pledges to be net zero. And, what are the different technologies that need to be in place to be able to achieve those type of goals? Is it
Yeah.
autonomous sales? Is it autonomous on the road? Is it electrification? Is it, an infrastructure thing that we need to be focused on to make hydrogen more available and easily
Mm,
accessible? From a labor side of things, from autonomous vehicles to being able to remote control them, right? Like forklift
absolutely.
is an example of something that's not the safest activity, and there are companies like your Phantom Auto that will be able to alleviate some of those challenges. So I think technology really opens the door for people that are not necessarily in the logistics space to be able to access this. In addition, so I think the whole sustainability. I think that a lot of companies have been talking about it for a long time, but with laws changing in Europe, you have to put your money
Mm,
where your mouth is and actually start implementing these things. Otherwise, it's going to cost a lot on the
yeah.
back end. So I think we'll see more technologies coming out to help alleviate and create more efficiency to this whole process of making a company more sustainable, and try to cut back on some of the waste or goods that are lost because of some of the issues where clearly technology plays a role to alleviate that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that there's a lot of a lot of nuances to the technology that kind of needs to be in place, and I think that that's kind of where a lot gets lost. Is there's people that have a lot of, you know, had a lot of expendable cash that they wanted to try and solve problems, and they said, oh, we've seen this problem for a year in the logistics sector, so let's throw $15 billion at it and try to create something. And what we've seen is a lot of those companies that just don't really have a good grasp on freight, the logistics, the supply chain in general, that they try to solve solutions that maybe don't need solving. Like there's already solutions for, or have already been looked into. So I think it's just looking at the complex nature of the different things that have to get done. Like you were saying, like trying to get certain, like being companies being carbon neutral, looking at having more autonomous spotter vehicles, having more autonomous and robotic forklifts, having more autonomous warehousing, and things like that. There's a lot of avenues that can be looked at, as well as like not having to have a piece of paper for a BOL, like digitizing the whole process of uploading your loads and things like that. There's a lot of things that can be done
Yeah,
a lot more effectively, and that's kind of where I think it just comes down to looking at people in the industry, looking at, okay, what actually can be done and how you can really effectively make change.
I agree. And also, looking at the skills and labor, I think the skills have changed, right?
Yeah.
So people need to adapt. People need to adapt. I think that, when it comes to robotics and automation, it's not necessarily about getting rid of people. It's about, collaborating with robots, making sure that like the
Yes.
robots are taking away some of the things that are dangerous or time consuming or overly repetitive. It'll make a person's job a lot better. So I think technology
Yeah.
and automation will actually improve the labor for those in the industry.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit. I want to dive into some of the some of the main topics, some of like maybe the top three or four topics that are going to be going on at Manifest, that people should be on the lookout for. Obviously AI and automation is probably one of them. What are some of the other really important topics that are going on at Manifest this year?
So our kickoff day actually is divided into three symposiums. So
Hmm.
maritime, sustainability, and intermodal. So those are three big areas that we'll
Yeah.
be able to deep dive in, really explore. Something that's come up a lot, of course, is around nearshoring or reshoring,
Hmm.
and what that looks like, how to do it, what needs to be in place, and then how that will change and what the effect will be as more manufacturing is moved here, how that's going to impact the system. Obviously,
Yeah.
around risk and fraud, cybersecurity. You've seen a number of different, hiccups come up in the industry. So
Oh
how do
yeah.
we avoid those? How do we avoid those? What can be done differently? How to prepare yourself to be more resilient. I mean, COVID really showed us that you need to diversify your vendors and your supplier relationships. So how are people doing
Yeah.
that? What's working? Should you build, in-house, or should you buy? What's the right fit for your organization, especially for those that are in a hyper growth scaling position?
Yeah, I think that that's really interesting because there's so many interesting topics going on right now, and you touched on one that I really am fascinated with is just the nearshoring trend, and a lot of the manufacturers, whether that's U.S. manufacturers, Chinese manufacturers, we're seeing this just massive influx of building massive industrial parks in Mexico, whether that's deeper into Mexico or right within 100 to 200 miles of the U.S. border. We're seeing a lot of that growth and expansion to get closer to America and to Canada because there's the
Yes,
both
over there.
yeah, exactly. So it's a two really huge markets that everyone wants to get closer to, and like you said, with the supply chain issues that we saw during COVID and the pandemic, um, everyone's looking to make sure that doesn't happen again, or if it does, a global event happens on that scale again, we're more prepared for it, right? And that's
Yeah.
always what it comes down to is being the most prepared, make sure the supply chains are as resilient as they can be, and I think that really showed us that they were not resilient at all.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a wake up call for for a
Yeah.
lot of people and companies. I mean, it's nice now everyone knows what I do. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. It's like before I would have to, really, really chop an onion to get, through to everyone as to what I do. But now it's like people are like, oh, supply chain freight. Exactly. I know exactly what you do. Yeah, you made sure my toilet paper wasn't at the grocery store. I remember you. No, I think it's great. It's a very an interesting time and interesting topics coming up, and like we were talking about, there's a lot of people that are going to be at Manifest. So if there's people out there that are listening that may be on the fence, why should they attend Manifest this year in particular?
I mean, it's the event that you need to be at, right? If you're
Mm,
shipping anything, if you are moving goods around the world or investing in companies that are moving goods around the world, this is what keeps us going. So it's
yeah,
important to be there. I think, from the investor side, there's a great opportunity to connect with other investors for co-investing opportunities, sharing deal flow, connecting with new companies that you could invest in or potentially in the future partner with. For corporates, it's exploring the new technologies firsthand, hearing what the insiders of the industries have to say, for to prepare themselves for what's to come. And then obviously for startups, this is your home, this is your place, right? You're gonna this is customers, it's clients, it's partnerships, it's investors. It's really everything that you need to grow and scale and have a successful business in the industry.
yeah, and I think that something we touched on just a little bit earlier in the show was just it's a really good opportunity to nurture and build those relationships because they are I allude to something. So I met someone at a freight festival, a freight event, earlier this year, and since that, like, him and I have met, it's just been one of those, like, we kicked it off. It's been like a very good friendship, and it's not just creating those interpersonal work relationships, but it's finding people that you can really like cultivate friendships with, and be able to really like just bounce ideas, and know that you're in like a good environment of good leaders, right? Like, you want to be with people that are winning and with people that know what they're doing and know what they're talking about, and being around experts that care about the industry, and care about pushing it forward.
Yeah, and our networking app is pretty amazing. So it'll be
Yeah,
released 4 to 6 weeks before the show, and you're able
perfect.
to schedule meetings. So there's actually a central meeting area in the middle of a floor, so you can schedule meetings. I can tell you, people were taking 25, 30 meetings a day
Wow.
this year's show. It was super productive. Um,
Yeah.
So there's that capability of like, start early, right? If you know you're coming, the app comes out, start planning your meetings. Like I would strongly recommend, this is not a show just to appear at. If you want to make the most out of it, it's really like start setting up your meetings now, or as soon as it's available, start setting up your meetings, and the following up with folks, like as you lead up to the show, once you're there. And then in addition, our technology with our name badges, you can actually, it's like a tile, you can kind of click it, and it'll
awesome.
share all your contact information.
Wow. That's really awesome.
Which is great. So if you're really busy, if you have a bunch of meetings, or if you're in the middle of something, this way you're connected, and, you can take the conversation offline, you can take it after the show. So the conversation doesn't have to end.
I can't tell you the amount of times where I've been at an event and I run into someone while I'm in a rush to go do something else, or in a meet, go rush into another meeting, and then I've got to take 45 or 50 seconds to a minute to be like, hey, let's connect, let's exchange numbers real fast. And it makes it a lot easier when you can just tap your name badge, like, here you go, here's all my info, boom, we're off 15 seconds later, right? I think that's something that, not a lot of other like events do, to kind of make things really easy, right?
Yeah, no, and it was exciting. We Manifest was actually nominated for Best Use of Technology at the Gold 100. So for the event industry.
That's awesome.
So it definitely has had quite the impact, and it's been super beneficial. Again, people are able to schedule meetings and are still talking to people that they met at the show just from being able to connect like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Pam, as we wrap up here, I want to ask you one more quick thing, and I'll let you go. I know you've got a busy rest of your day. What is one thing that you are most looking forward to, and it cannot be the Puppy Palace, that you're looking forward to at Manifest for this year?
For me, like, we work really hard on this all year round, and we try to outdo ourselves. The scale of it is massive. It's actually going to be, our expo floor is going to be 200,000 square feet. We actually have
that's huge.
Yeah, it's massive. We have the full Caesars Forum. So for me, it's seeing everything that we work so hard for come to life, and being able to connect with so many of my friends and partners in the industry from all over the world, right? Because we do have folks coming from over 50 countries. So it'll be great to be able to catch up with my friends from everywhere, and to learn from each other, really, because what's working in Europe, we can learn from. What's working in South America, like, there's a lot of different cross globalizations that we can learn from each other. And where else can you do that?
Exactly. And this is the best opportunity to be able to put those minds together and be able to just learn for a couple of days and take upon their experiences and build upon them. And I think it's really awesome. And I'm really excited to be there with you guys, to be able, it's my first Manifest event. So I'm really excited to be there. I'm excited to see you guys. Pam, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know you're busy, so I appreciate your time. Where can people find you guys? Where can people find you online and Manifest, if they're interested in attending, or if they just want to learn more about the event?
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
So the website is Manifest. There's just a dot in between the ST part of it. So go to the website. We're on LinkedIn. We're on all of the social channels. We have an amazing newsletter that covers everything that's happening in the industry, and we'll spotlight some pretty exciting things. So definitely, register, book your tickets, and definitely book your travel and hotel, because as soon as the teams are in the Super Bowl, it
gets hectic.
It's gonna be fun. Yeah.
No, absolutely. If you guys are interested in Manifest, or seeing the kind of content that Pam shares in relation to the event, I will have all the links in the show notes. And remember to use the ThinkFreight link. You do save $200 on admission. If you guys like today's show, make sure you like and review, or if you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. And then don't forget to check out our newsletter that drops Monday and Wednesdays at thinkfreight.io. And we'll catch you guys in the next show. Thanks, Pam.